Truth, lies, shenanigans.
Whoop, whoop.
Hi, Lizzie. You got some people trying to profit off slavery.
So first, I have a question for you guys. Like, how many of you have been to a plantation? Have any of you ever visited a plantation? Which one
Several.
did you go to? So you've been
I,
to a few. Yep.
yeah, I mean, I stayed in Airbnb. That was a plantation. I stayed at,
Did
yeah,
you?
hmm yep. I stayed at I stayed at a,
No way.
yeah, I did. Why you keep looking at me like I'm crazy? What? And then,
Mhm.
and then I stayed at, um, can I get it out? You got-
Oh
and then,
no, do you want to?
and then of course, I visited uh, Colonial Williamsburg and other places like
So that's what I
Okay.
was gonna say. Like I've been on when I was in elementary school. I think it's mandatory in DC public schools to go take the Colonial Williamsburg trip. And so while we were there, we did this plantation tour and we visited, I believe it's called Great Hope Plantation.
that.
But it was for historical aspects and learning purposes. It wasn't for me to kick my feet up and take a shower and have some wine. So I didn't know that this was a thing, that there was a thing where Airbnbs or other rental properties, not just Airbnb, but other rental properties advertise slave quarters, slave cabins, plantations for overnight stays, weekend stays. You could have a wedding at some place. And so all hell broke loose a couple of weeks ago when a guy posted online, I believe it was a TikTok video, where he was talking about this Airbnb posting for a slave cabin in Greenville, Mississippi. And he was like, how do I know it's a slave cabin? Because they advertise it as a slave cabin. And one of the most, you know, egregious things about this is the tons of on the Airbnb posts, the number of people in the reviews who were talking about how much they liked it, how much it was a great property, how much they could feel the souls of the
Oh my
slaves that were there.
goodness.
And
That's a
so
bit much.
my question to you guys is, aside from Neo, because he has done this before.
I meant to say,
Um,
well, I meant to say a bed and breakfast. It wasn't a Airbnb. It was a bed and breakfast.
That's still
okay,
criminal.
Okay.
but yeah, right, Rob. Like, all right. But like, what do you guys think about this? Like, should these be sacred lands that are preserved
Mm.
and not commercialized? Or is this just the American way? Let's
Gianni.
start with Gianni.
Gianni.
Just the American way sounds right. That they're always trying to capitalize on something. But I don't know, Liz. I don't think that it should be preserved. I don't know what they should do with the land. I don't think it should be commercialized either. Maybe they should preserve the land and just kind of like it could be a museum. It could be something that they just develop the land, use it for something like for the community. I don't know. Somehow let it be functional. But I do think that commercializing it makes it a gimmick. It's like trying to commercialize the
Mm.
Holocaust in Germany or something. Like,
Listen. Are there
Dude,
Airbnbs in Auschwitz? Are there
no.
Airbnbs in Auschwitz? No, no,
very offensive.
no.
Very
Only in
offensive.
America. Only in
Very
America,
offensive.
people. Rob?
Hmm.
True.
I'm glad you brought up Auschwitz because that was going to be my point. Like, to take perhaps some of the larger plantations or some of them that were more prolific, where a great number of atrocities happened, to preserve it in a memorial type of site, such as Auschwitz. But unfortunately, it was so prevalent all over the country, you don't want to preserve all of them. And I agree with
Mhm.
Johnny. At that point, that land should be flipped and used towards reparations. But my wife is a fan of the Netflix series Dark Tourist. I've watched a couple of episodes and it's kind of neat. So I recognize that there's a demographic that seeks these types of locations. Um, but no, I'm with you, Johnny. Like, you really shouldn't be monetizing a people's suffering. It's um, it's not right. Perhaps in, like Auschwitz, like a museum. Hey, we'll take your donations. We've got some memorial stuff you can bring home. In that light, sure, but it's being done in a very educational tone as opposed to being truly like an entertainment destination, right?
Right.
I also wanted to really quick make a point. Sorry, Neil. It said that in the article, someone intentionally marketed a vacation rental as a former slave cabin because they felt slavery was a good selling point. Like, I feel like that shows a lot already, based on the reviews and all of that. That statement is true. Like, people are so fascinated with slavery, like racism, the whole civil, that whole thing. Um, which is
They're
interesting. I don't
fascinated.
know.
They're fascinated by it because, again, they see the monetization, but also they're capitalists, right? So they want to make money off of it, but they don't want to talk about it as an educational point, as a teaching moment. Like, we're still having issues with teaching critical race theory, having the book 1619 taught in classes, teaching the truth about American history, both the good and the bad. But
Yeah.
then you have all these people who are like, but hey, let me go get married on a plantation. Let me go stay overnight in a plantation. Like, I get it. I don't get it. And it makes me sad because I think we're trivializing a lot of this. I think we are downplaying what these spaces really meant in a historical context, but also to Black history and Black culture. And so I never once when I went to Williamsburg did I have a feeling like, oh, I want to stay overnight here. Let me have a slumber party here.
I did. Not a
Terrifying.
slumber party, but
Never once did I think that.
I did.
Well, you're Neo. Um, it
Well,
I
just,
can't wait
it
to hear
bothers me. It bothers me.
yeah, and to me, the
It bothers
Canadian equivalent would be, anyone that would want to stay at a residential school themed Airbnb. It's just not something that you do.
me. And yeah, a lot
Well,
of the comments were just like very unseedy and just, ugh,
of
and
course.
Yeah, like
it goes to, remember we had, I think it was last year, one of our topics, we were highlighting that interracial couple who did the engagement photo shoot where he was dressed
oh
up
Yes.
as
yeah,
a slave. Like, I'm just like,
That was ridiculous.
this is not funny, people.
That
This
was
is
ridiculous.
not, something that's celebratory. And even with the plantations, like, I think it was last year, either last year in 2021 or in 2020, a celebrity couple, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, they apologized finally for having their I believe they got married in 2012, their
I think that's
wedding
what it is.
at a plantation in Alabama. And I'm just like, first of all, it took y'all all this. If you felt the need to apologize, it took y'all this long to get it. But more importantly, Ryan Reynolds is from Canada. Blake Lively is from LA. How did y'all get to a damn plantation when you're
yeah.
looking
That
for
is.
venues in Alabama? This is not anything that has meaning to you. And for him to be like, oh, we thought it was a great venue initially, but now we see. What do you mean now you see?
So
It's
So,
a
weird.
plantation.
all right.
It's a
So
plantation.
I'm feeling. I was torn when I was thinking about this. I'm feeling you guys on profiting from the history of slavery, you know, and I'm definitely not with them lying about it to profit off of it because that's definitely some bullshit. But I mean, if it's something authentic, you know, we spend a lot of time preaching about, making sure that people understand the history and know the history and understand where it comes from. We were talking about Williamsburg. When I went to Williamsburg, I was transported and I was like, man, what would it have been like to have been a slave here? And it did give me some sense of it. But honestly, like when you said, you don't think about sleeping in there, I wanted to experience it. Like I'm sitting in my slave quarters. You see my background right now. But I wanted to experience
Damn.
it. I wanted to experience it, right? I
That's
wanted to
crazy.
know what that was like. And I don't know, I think that someone who is in there, they start to think differently. Like, man, how could you have 10 people living here? I mean, is the infatuation really about slavery or is it about history and understanding history? Because if I would have loved to have stayed in a castle or shoot in Roman, in Rome they had slaves. I would love to see what it'd been like to be in a Roman slavery quarters or something like that, and to
Mm.
experience that, to get a sense of what that was like.
That's
So I think the
terrifying.
infatuation is more about history and experiencing it and putting yourself in those situations, understanding it. Most people, I mean, that's for me at least, but there's a lot of people, like you said, profiting off of it. It's glamorized, and that annoys me. But I think there's some people who genuinely want to experience history as it was. So
And you can
I
experience
like that.
that with, but you can experience that without, in my opinion, belittling it
sure,
or
Hmm.
making it, this like casual experience. And so to go on a website and to see people talking about how cool it was, how beautiful it was, there's nothing beautiful about sleeping in a slave cabin. There should be
Yeah.
nothing beautiful about sleeping in a slave cabin. And I don't think for
it
the
should be an authentic
Airbnb,
experience if you're going to do it.
and I don't think
Oh
the
yeah,
Airbnb
here, like
is
I'd like
do
to
being,
do
live
six
like they
do
lived. Is
16
what I'd
hours
like
of
to do.
labor. Do 16 hours of labor, and then tell me if the landscape is as beautiful as you think it is. Tell me that you
but
went to your
also,
rustic cabin and enjoyed a good night's sleep. No, like, are you sleeping on the floor? Are you sleeping in a cute little bed? Like, but no,
but
like,
also,
I,
I,
it
I would
trivializes it.
question,
It really does.
it trivializes it, and I would question whether or not any of these people have done their research, know anything
Yeah.
about the historical aspect of it. Like, what went on here, really?
It's
Have
true.
you read the history? Most, if to say this is cool means you haven't.
If I had
You
done it,
just
I
did.
would do something similar where I would make it a experience. Like I would have
Yeah.
historical information on there, and I would actually make it very, very like much like. Yeah, I don't know. I would do it differently if I were doing it, but I get it. I just get it. I mean, I get the people who want to experience history as it was and wants to be a part. Because I do wish that I could have been stayed in one of the hotels in Colonial Williamsburg and experienced what that was like. But all we could do was look and see. But experiencing it is totally different. And I don't know. I wanted to do more than just see and look,
But I
or
don't even
I
think,
don't want to do
is
more than
it
just learn about it in books.
is
Right.
it really experiencing it though?
Not
Like,
these trivialized Airbnbs, sure, but
but
it
even if
can
you're
be.
at, no, it can't because you don't have an overseer
Yeah.
there. You still have the ability to get up and leave and make a living and not be confined to that space. So it's really not, it's a faux experience, if anything. And
Yeah.
it just,
I mean, you're
it,
never gonna be able to recreate it
it,
without actually
exactly.
fully.
And so I don't, yeah, I don't like it, put it that way. But the fact that this was not the only listing, and Gianni in our pre-show was talking about how she had a couple of friends who had heard about this before because this wasn't the only listing. So the fact that Airbnb had to take several listings down is appalling. It's just appalling. It's appalling. Like I don't, but it's one of the perils of capitalism, where we see a dollar, a buck to be made in every single aspect of our lives. And
Yeah.
it's sad. It's sad.
Yeah.
Truth on
Agreed.
the right end.
So I'm just to be clear, I am in agreement for the most part what you're saying. I just know that I would have loved to be able to experience some of those things authentically. That's all.
I
Kind of
don't
know
want
what
to
you're talking
experience
about.
nothing
Yeah.
about slavery. I don't want to experience nothing about it except for me shooting a damn slave owner overseer in between his eyes. That's
Well, what
it.
if they offered that at the Plantation Museum experience?
That's a great question, Gianni.
Right?
Uh,
So what if they offered
please
that?
exit through the gift shop.
That
I
would
mean,
be
I
fun.
plead the fifth. I plead the fifth because
All right,
I'm not trying to incriminate myself.
Oh,
let me get to these comments online. Um, so let's see. Paulette, no, Paulette says respect question mark. I think she was talking about the
she was
WTF.
speaking about the corpse.
Yep.
Yeah, the remains.
Yep. And then Jackson Rollins says we took field trips to Williamsburg and Mount Vernon for history classes. However, people have been renting plantations out for weddings for years. Yep.
I would
Mike,
this would never.
Oh, and then Jack Robinson says there's a larger movement afoot to trivialize and to minimize the horrors of slavery. Why not make it a museum or having a National Park Service take it over and maintain it for historical purposes? And
Now,
Mike
some
Wolf
of these
says,
spots
thanks
have
God
been
she's
designated.
back.
Oh yeah. Hey, Mike. No, some of these properties have been designated as, historical landmarks. That should be noted. A lot of them have been. So there's going to be no
Okay.
Airbnb there. There's going to be no bread and breakfast there. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think people need more education than they do of bread and breakfast
Yeah,
on this
yeah.
topic.
I totally agree with that. I mean, the place that I had stayed, I don't even remember where it was now. That was a long time ago. But it was I do remember that it was just a it was just this place. I mean, as far as I knew at the time, it was just a place. They did have some information on it online about what it was and the history and things like that. But it was just a bread and breakfast out in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in Virginia or something.
Yeah,
But
Fun.
but yeah, it was just and like I say, there's no historical information behind it. You know what I'm saying? It
yeah,
was just a
yeah,
place to stay,
yeah,
and it was referred to as
Oh,
a plantation, old plantation in the historical information. But really, I would like it to be more of a you know people to experience it if you're going to stay there. You know, talk about like the good and the bad of it, and I mean I don't know. It should be
like
a
there should be like a tour
I will
guide.
say,
it should be
Neil,
like a
I will
museum
say,
experience.
I can see the allure because a lot of these places are beautiful, sprawling properties.
They are.
They really
Mhm.
are.
I mean,
Yeah.
built.
But
I mean, black people did some incredible work back in the day.
okay, can you say for the people in the back? We built some beautiful things.
Beautiful homes. We built some
Um,
beautiful homes.
but we have to remember, who was a part of, who was allowed to enjoy that,
Right.
who was
Yes.
legally allowed to enjoy that beauty. And that's what, hurts my heart with a lot of stuff. And this is a topic, not this particular topic, but when I was at Howard teaching, I mean, even though I know a lot about slavery in this country and the Civil War and the North versus the South, I was still always learning as I was teaching lessons to my students. I was still always consuming information. This was a topic today, this week, that I knew nothing about.
Mm.
Like, I really, aside from
Wow.
Blake and Ryan Reynolds getting married on a plantation, I did not know that this was a thing in
It is
this
a thing.
country.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I learned some stuff. I learned
All
some
right.
stuff.
All right.
Oh
Is
yeah.
this
Truth
truth
lies
Oh
lies?
shenanigans.
gosh, it's horrible shenanigans. And it's got some
Shenanigans.
bullshit in it. Got some bullshit in it. But
Yeah,
it's
I'm
definitely
really
Shenanigans.
not feeling it.
shenanigans.
I'm not really feeling
And
that
it's
whole
and it's
trivializing
it's
it and
it's a testament to the hypocrisy of a lot of the laws that we live by in this country.
yeah.
Because again, like I said, we are battling about the type of education we want to present to our children as it relates to history, as it relates to slavery.
Mhm.
But then we have this where
Yeah.
we could just go party and live it up,
Yep.
in a slave cabin.
I'm glad
So
they
Yeah.
took it down. I'm glad they took it down.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
All right.
yeah.